I want to start today by everybody just thinking on a word, inclusion. Alright, it's a pretty simple word, but it can bring on a multitude of emotions for us. Can you remember growing up, elementary school, everybody in your class is invited to a birthday party except for you? Or more recently with social media, you see your friends post a picture, they're out to lunch, nobody called you. Alright, how does it make you feel? Not good, right? So this is what schools can be like for thousands of students in America who learn through segregated special needs classrooms. So a little backstory on why I care about this so much. This is my son John. He's here today. Can you wave to everybody? Yeah. Okay. So John was diagnosed with autism just before his 3rd birthday. And at that time, we figured he was going to have to go in a special needs classroom at some point throughout his school day. And that scared me a little bit as a parent. So I started researching educational opportunities that might be available for him, and I came across something called inclusive education. So the goal of inclusive education is just like what it sounds like. You include students of all abilities in the same general education classroom as much as possible. And once I found out about this, nothing else just really seemed good enough. So when implemented properly, inclusive education is beneficial for all the parties involved, not just a special needs student. And if we make it a priority for our public school systems, we're going to see a greater acceptance of this developmental diversity that we have, which is really crucial for our country. So I want to start by taking a look at what's wrong with our public schools in America. So most schools right now, you get labeled special needs. You're taken out of the general education classroom and placed in this segregated special needs classroom. Once you're in there, your standards are lowered a little bit, and you kind of get shuffled along year after year. So this is just not acceptable. How do we know it? Well, only 55% of our disabled students are going on to higher education, compared with 70% of their typically developing peers. So there's more negatives. For students who have the mental capabilities to realize that they are being pulled out of a classroom from their academic performance or even their behavioral performance, that has negative impacts on their self-esteem. So they know they're getting removed, and it greatly affects their self-esteem. So that's not acceptable. And last but not least, a problem I want to talk about is with our teachers. Now, I'm sure we might have some education majors in here. I have had lots of great teachers. I love teachers. But many teachers right now in the general education classrooms are just not equipped or trained to work with special needs students. And this is a problem because according to the National Center for Education, 62% of our special needs kids are already in general education classrooms. Now that's great, we want them in there, but they're just not trained, the teachers. Let's look at our own University of MTSU. Elementary education majors need 120 credit hours to graduate. Only 6 of those deal with special education or learning differences. So clearly what we're doing right now isn't working, it's not acceptable. What's the solution? Inclusive education. So let's start by looking at how this is going to help. So let's start with the special needs student. So in addition to the obvious social and emotional benefits we get from inclusive education, it's going to help them academically as well. When you leave them in that general education classroom with those higher standards, they're naturally going to try to reach those. Back in 1968, a man named Robert Rosenthal published a study called Pygmalion in the Classroom. And essentially what this study did was he labeled some students at random to be at risk or on the verge of academic breakthrough. The teachers then changed the way that they interacted with that student, and that student then changed the way they performed. And 1 year later, they had significantly higher test scores. So we know this works. And it also leads to a focus on the child's abilities rather than their disabilities, which is crucial for inclusive education. So we said there's benefits for the special needs students, but it's also going to help these neurotypical or typical students as well. And it's going to help them by learning patience and understanding. When you have to work beside somebody who develops differently than you, you have opportunities to learn communication skills. Has anybody ever tried to have a conversation or interaction with someone with limited verbal or nonverbal capabilities? You know, it takes time. Yeah, it takes time to learn how to do that. Even myself, it took me time to learn how to interact with my own children. So, yeah, so that's a great, and the earlier you do that, the better. All right, so we can't just help the students for inclusive education to work. We have to help our teachers. And the easiest way we can do that is through utilizing their yearly training hours. So in Rutherford County, for example, teachers are required to have 12 training hours a year. Even half of those towards mandated special education training is going to go a long way to help our students. Another way we can help is by working towards shifting the focus away from standardized test scores, because they create a pretty inaccurate picture of the student. Alright, so usually the arguments are, this is so expensive, or it's going to be a lot of work. And yes, it is a daunting task, but it can be done. When we opted not to send my son to public schools, we decided to homeschool. And I created an organization called Honeybee Christian Co-op. I started with just like 4 friends and our 6 kids. They were so cute. And we've grown to over 20 families, over 75 kids. We meet once a week and put on a small school day so the kids can have some classroom learning. In our classes, we have 3 of the 5 classes have some kind of student with a developmental disability, from autism, Down syndrome, vision impairment. And during the day, we focus on things like working together as a team, respecting your peers and elders, and just having fun while gaining knowledge, which is so much more important than just memorizing facts. So I know what some of you are probably thinking, this is a small, specialized sect, it's not held to any standards, and you're right, but it can be done on a larger scale. This is Mission Hill Public School in Boston, Massachusetts. So they get everything right. They've shifted the focus away from those standardized tests, and they have this wonderful, individualized, project-based curriculum. I want to read one sentence from their mission statement because it's just so wonderful. It says, we aim at producing producing youngsters who can live productive, socially useful, and personally satisfying lives while also respecting the rights of all others. That goal is so much better than a 4.0. I don't know why it's not in every school's mission statement. So I know some of you at this point are probably thinking, so what? Why do I care? I'm not a parent. I'm not going to be a teacher. This does not affect me at all. Think again, guys, okay? So the school system is shaping our future. Your current legislator, or your future legislators, your future employees, and just voting citizens in general are in these classrooms, and how they are shaped greatly affects how our future is shaped. Okay, so clearly inclusive education is the best plan of action. So what can we do to make it happen? How can you help? Number 1, get out and vote, all right? So especially in your local elections, research the candidates, find the ones that are going to be supportive of inclusive education. Secondly, it doesn't have to stop at school. You can carry it on to your employers. Work for an inclusive and hiring employer, or if you have a business, become an inclusive employer. Hire people with disabilities. And last but not least, volunteer your time. So find organizations that work to support the disabled community and volunteer for them. I want to close with a quote that plainly shows just how simple this change can be. It's from Ignacio Estrada, and he says, if a child can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. Thank you.